Hello everyone, welcome back to my Pokemon review series. In this episode, we are going over the Feraligatr. Now, Feraligatr is among the top berry specialists in the game, him along with his siblings of the other two Gen 2 starters. He is the water type, which means he is the best at Cyan Beach. Now that makes him a particularly good early game hunt, since Cyan Beach is the first island where you can get fixed berries at. If you get a good Feraligatr early on, then you can easily just go to Cyan Beach and guarantee the berry type you want, and easily level it up, get those high drowsy powers, get you seeing some good stuff. But yeah, he's got the slumbering sleep type, as is typical for water types. Water type we see a bit more variation than other types, but it's still generally the slumbering type, so that's the case for Feraligatr and his whole line. Berry specialty, as I said before. It's got the Charge Strength S variable main skill. Now, this main skill is, in my opinion, one of the best ones for a berry specialist specifically to have. Just because it's just giving strength straight to Snorlax. You're not really thinking much about it. That's kind of what the berry specialists are best at doing, so this skill kind of just makes them better at doing what they're already doing. So I like the Charge Strength S, and the variable version is better on average than the fixed version, so one of the best skills for a berry specialist. Now, something very interesting about the Feraligatr and where it compares to its siblings is that you gotta look at these two numbers. So Feraligatr, it's got a stronger berry type. It's got 31 base power comparative to the Meganium, who has the Duran Berry of 30 base value, and the Lepa Berry with 27 on the Typhlosion. It's got the strongest of the three berries. And it's got the same speed as the Meganium, that average baseline speed of 46 minutes and 40 seconds that we see on so many Pokemon in this game. So you'd think with a stronger berry and the same base speed, you'd think it'd be about the same strength as the Meganium. And it is, but not because of the berries. In fact, this guy actually is weaker in berry production than both the Typhlosion and the Meganium. And the primary reason for that is this number right here. This is its ingredient rate. It is at a whopping 25.7%. That is high enough to compete with some ingredient specialists. I know off the top of my head, the Venusaur, if I'm making the comparison to Kanto starters, the Venusaur has an ingredient rate of 26.4%. So this being at 25.7 is pretty close to that. Compared to the Meganium, who's got like less than 20, I don't remember its exact number, but less than 20% for its ingredient rate. It's losing a lot of those berry productions to ingredients. Which, if you're using these ingredients in a meal, if you're making like something that has oil and sausage, which I don't even know if there is a meal with oil and sausage, I didn't check this beforehand, but so yeah, we're really only using the oil or the sausage, unless you're making drought katsu curry. That's a really low meal though, wouldn't recommend it. So overall, like, this ingredient list, not that synergistic, but if you got like a mono sausage for alligator and you're using the sausage in every meal, you're consistently making the corn keema curry, and the Feraligatr is aiding your Charizard because your Charizard isn't quite good enough to make that, then you can get a lot of strength out of its ingredients, and it definitely will actually do better than the Typhlosion or the Meganium because it's using its ingredients really well, and it's actually producing a sizable amount of them with that high ingredient rate. But typically speaking, we see ingredient finding on berry specialists is typically seen as a bad thing. I talk about this more in depth in my my sneaky snacking video in my mechanics series, so go check that out if you're more interested in the topic. But now you gotta ask, so if you're not using these towards the meal you're making for the week, then how does the Feraligatr compare? Well, if you just add the ingredients and the berries, then the Feraligatr actually comes out weaker than the Meganium and the Typhlosion. And you can just make that pretty simple comparison if you go to berry specialists, you're specifically looking for the right berries. if you look right in here, and if you're looking specifically at berry value, now the Feraligatr is coming out a little bit lower here. But if we're just looking at berry strength, it looks even worse. The Meganium produces about 20,000 a day, the Typhlosion about 21,000, and the Feraligatr about 19,000. Compared to them only being about 1,000 apart for each for that. So it's actually the weakest at producing berries. But as you can see there, they all produce roughly the same amount of total strength. And that primarily comes in this other weird stat. Now, this other weird number. In the skill trigger rate. Now, if we also throw the trigger rate on here, let's get rid of the base frequency. If we throw in the trigger rate, you can see that the Feraligatr is significantly higher than the Meganium and the Typhlosion, which means it's actually proccing its skill a decent amount. In fact, if we look at the expected skill count, which they all have the same skill, then the Feraligatr is expected to trigger about 3.1 times a day compared to about 2.7 to 2.8 on the other two. So that's like almost half of a trigger every single day. That doesn't sound like much, but that does add up over time. And that is what gives the Feraligatr that little bit of extra strength over the other two evolutions. Now, this means that on the Feraligatr, you're kind of looking for weird skills. Because of the high ingredient rate, it's more susceptible to an ingredient finding subskill or nature, eating into more of its berry production and weakening it, and making it more difficult to use. So that is something to kind of keep an eye out for. The other two won't be bothered by it as much with their lower ingredient rates. But I still don't really see that as necessarily a really, really bad thing to have those subskills. And the Feraligatr also kind of enjoys skill trigger subskills as well. Typically speaking, we don't really think about skill trigger subskills in nature on a berry specialist. But if we see it, we're like, that exists, I guess. On the Feraligatr, it's actually a nice little boon, because it's proccing its skill a decent amount, despite being a berry specialist. So it's just kind of a weirdly designed Pokemon with the way they did that. They also gave it a decently high inventory space, which you actually kind of want on the Feraligatr, because that gives it more capabilities to roll for its skill. So, unfortunately, it's actually lower than the Meganium and the Typhlosion. They're at 20 and 23, respectively. And on a 3-stage Pokemon, though, this will get up to 29 real easily. If you're sleeping with it all the time, that'll go up to 37. This thing gets plenty of inventory for what it's trying to do. It will fill faster because it is a berry specialist. And realistically, even though skill subskills are nice on it, you're really looking for the berry finding skills first, because it's like berry finding skills are top priority, but then like just below that, you can look for skill stuff too. But if it's got main skill chance down in the nature, but it's got flawless berry finding skills, don't be worried about it. Yeah, the skill trigger is what sets it apart from the other two, but it's still a berry specialist first and foremost. I think that's important to understand when looking to invest in the proper Totodile. Now, where can you find this thing? Well, it's at Greengrass and Cyan, and as is the case for the Croconaw and the Totodile. Really, you're spending your time at Cyan if you want to hunt this thing. Cyan Beach is a pretty good early game area. Once you unlock it, you probably should go there. I didn't do that in my playthrough, just because I didn't really get the Totodile. I was hunting other stuff, so I liked the variable berries on Greengrass more, but I think it's been generally agreed upon that if you can just go to Cyan to fix that berry to water berry right away and catch yourself decent Totodiles, then you can get some really good early game strength from that. It's also good late game if you catch a really cracked one with the Berry Finding S, especially if it's got the Berry Finding S and Help bonus combo. But yeah, Feraligatr, one of the strongest berry specialists in the game. I think each island has its own like top tier berry specialist. If you kind of look in here and sort by total strength, you can see that you can actually see what the top tiers are, in my opinion. It just kind of naturally works out that the top 5 berry specialists all are at different islands. So this is these are the creme of the crop when it comes to searching for berry specialists. You want a Walrein for Snowdrop, a Raichu for the new Old Gold power plant coming out, Feraligatr for Cyan, Meganium for Lapis, and Typhlosion for Top. So other berry specialists will do the job, but they're more substitutes for the primaries. Anyway, I hope you learned something about the Feraligatr. Hope you have enjoyed. Thank you.